Oh,
Um,
wow.
the images are incredible from the news. I don't know if they're drones or choppers, but just like a sea of Union Jacks all along these key arteries in central London. Absolutely astonishing looking. Um, and Tommy Robinson was at the head of it, which is the most
Was he?
astonishing part because, even I would say like a year ago, mentioning his name had the same effect as like mentioning Steve Bannon or Donald Trump in like 2018. Like absolutely like sent like shock waves through the person you were speaking to. Like they would have like a physical reaction of like, oh, don't talk to me about that Nazi or whatever. And about 1 million people traveled from all over the UK to march behind him. So, I mean, obviously that there's so much going on in the United Kingdom that was going to be big anyway. But I'm certain that the fact that he was assassinated just 3 or 4 days before really drove people out. Like I know that what you're saying about the Christians in Korea, that was the who had organized this much smaller march, but it was still, it was still a few, like maybe a couple hundred people in Belfast. It was these sort of very, very devout, they're very staunch um, Protestants who like deeply Christian who were very moved to honor him. Um, and the crowd was a bit mixed, but it was, yeah, it's definitely partly the Christians coming out in just grief.
Mhm.
And you know what? Interestingly, just a little quick report from the UK. I have been in communication with a lot of UK turfs, and UK turfs are like the best people in the world. And almost all the ones that I know are former lefties, like single moms and people who worked in the arts councils, and people who had jobs, in arts, but like very like lower middle income. Um, and they're just in absolute shock and grief over the death of Charlie Kirk. And all of them are saying to me, it's not that I agreed with everything he said. None of these people are Christians, not practicing Christians, deeply faithful Christians the way Charlie was. Um, and they're just devastated. And half the audience on Saturday in Belfast were turfs who were just appalled. And I've been working on a theory about this, and I feel like a lot of these women have been canceled and had their lives upended, if not almost ruined, like
Mhm.
financially ruined, having to deal with constant harassment and just really vicious kind of social blowback. Like not oh well, you some friend doesn't want you to invite you to their party. Like really kind of life destroying blowback because they said something like, men can't have babies, can't give birth, or I don't think men should be in women's prisons.
Mhm.
And I think the fact that like they've suffered, they really have in small, quiet ways. Not many of them have never, no one who knows who they are. And I think that the fact that Charlie Kirk was out there on the trans issue, delivering the exact same message, sort of in the lion's den,
Mhm.
and just repeatedly over and over and over again. I think and I think it's kind of the same with all of us. We've all been trying to process this bizarre and dangerous political social environment by talking about it. Um, and the fact that he was cut down in front of all of our eyes,
Mhm.
doing the thing that these women have also been doing and silently and suffering for it. I think the fact that he existed and was out there with a huge microphone, and with huge access to power, like I feel like it gave those women comfort in ways that they didn't even fully realize until he was cut down in front of us. And that's
Mhm.
a part of why it's having such a huge emotional impact
Mhm.
on people outside his immediate circle and outside his movement.
And that's something I'm hearing from a lot of people is how personally this is impacting them. And this is a real personal grief for many people. It's not like other events or other assassinations where you have this great welling of empathy that's there, but there's also a really personal level of grief. And I think that we should get into that a little bit. And I know we're kind of just jumping into the conversation, everybody. Thank you for being here with us. It is Monday, September 15th. This is the Solid Ground live stream. I'm Leslie Elliott Boyce. I'm joined by Deborah Knox, Jennifer Friend, Christine Siefenwolk, and Jenny Holland. And it's great to see you guys in the chat. Hey, David and Cody and Kathleen, Student of Rhythm, Ray, Tony, nice to see y'all today. And before we launch into some more dialogue, Deborah, do you want to really quickly introduce Solid Ground for everybody?
Sure. Solid Ground is a peer support community for anyone concerned about the imposition of critical social justice and/or authoritarian measures such as medical mandates in their workplace, university, children's schools, or community. We offer weekly online peer support groups in which members share ideas, thoughts, and support for how to navigate the impact of these ideologies and answer the question, where do we go from here? You can join our support groups for $10 a month, and you can join our forum on locals for $5 a month. For more information about the support groups, go to a Solid Ground Substack and go to Solid Ground Locals for the forum. Please note that Solid Ground does not provide psychotherapy or legal advice, and nothing we do should be construed as such.
Thanks, Deborah. Carrie Bartholomew. Wow, Carrie. She says, we were there, my entire family. I thought we were going to be shot. Wow, you were there, Carrie. We were going to talk last week and we didn't have a chance to connect, but I hope we can talk this week. Maybe we can do a stream. I'd love to hear your thoughts because that's so immediate for you being present. And I'm always interested in Carrie's thoughts anyway, because she's a really interesting, thoughtful person. She says so many young people in the crowd were gutted. They felt he was the only person who stood for them.
Oh God.
Oh my God.
So
Ooh.
that's the thing about this assassination. It's like the person who did it and the people who celebrate it, they're not just saying that he should have no right to speak his opinions. They're saying that the rest of us should have no right to hear those opinions.
That's right.
So it's a massive, massive assault on free speech and public discourse.
They're even saying he shouldn't have the right to live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is what
anybody that followed him have the right to live. I mean, there's an assault on anybody who ever possessed those beliefs also, or who, and I don't like to say follow him, that sounds kind of weird, but people who supported his beliefs and who were part of Turning Point and what it stands for and who participated in his movement don't have the right to live either. I mean, it's like this really huge kind of statement about that. And, I was actually really relieved to see some people getting fired for some of the statements they made online about celebrating his death. I mean, there's something to be said for free speech on all levels, which I understand, but that kind of violence shouldn't be tolerated. And it's been tolerated from, riots and all sorts of things that happen on the left. I'm just going to say it, for a really long time now. And I think it's about time that there's some consequences for people that are inciting violence on the other side of the spectrum.
I agree. I
absolutely say there has been some, so I always hate like the doxing or any of that. I have to be honest, but there have been cases of people not saying something like, oh, he should have been killed, like a mildly critical thing, that have also been losing jobs and positions. So I guess it's like you can't control which way it goes when you kind of go, we're going to go back the other direction. And there's going to be some cases where it's like, wow, that really shouldn't have probably happened. But the same thing, it's like, I don't want someone like my classroom kids teacher telling children in a class, oh, it's so good this person got killed, or my doctor saying that. And so I think when I struggle when the vengeful thing comes out, it's one thing about corrective measures, like this really is not appropriate. This is not a person that, like, do you want them to be in the care of this person when they're espousing that? Like, what is that going to do to you? And then the other of like, well, someone's something I don't quite like, and I can get them, and so it's this line for me. But obviously there was so much egregious behavior. I understand.
Well, I think this kind of shows people's reactions online. The people who are celebrating it, are saying things about him being a white supremacist or a fascist, and they're bandying about these terms. And I think this shows how dangerous that rhetoric is, that, the left keeps doing this when there's opinions that they dislike, instead of saying, I disagree with this opinion because here's what I think better ideas look like, they just say, oh, you're a Nazi, or oh, you're a racist, or you're a white supremacist, which I think is a really weak way of going about it and shows that they don't know how to counter the argument effectively. But it's dangerous because it gives people this idea, well, if he was a Nazi or a white supremacist or a fascist, then it can't be that bad. It must be good that
Right.
he's dead, because you don't want a Nazi running around. So this careless use of the word Nazi by either side, I'm sure the right
Right.
does sometimes too, is just really harmful, I think.
Yeah, we had this really great Jonathan Alpert, who's a
Mhm.
friend. He's been on the live stream with us recently, put out this really great piece on splitting. And he talks about how this kind of goes both ways.
Was that the one in the Wall Street Journal?
Yes, it is. It's the one in the Wall
Yeah,
Street Journal, and I can
that's a
link
good
to that
piece.
in the notes, or in the description of this video.
Good.
He talks about how people are justifying and even savoring this assassination and what that reveals about people. And he talks about how, I love this line. He says, once someone is cast as beyond repair, fantasies of his elimination follow. If only he were gone, everything would be better. And he points out that this isn't just a left-wing phenomenon. This is something the language has been really disturbing on the left. And this is what I feared when I was in a applied psychology, clinical mental health counseling program, where they said, we won't treat Trump supporters.
That's right.
Like they're not human. What? You can't apply human psychology to this particular category of people. And what
They're
the hell is a
beyond
Trump
repair.
supporter? It's anybody who votes Republican.
Yeah,
So
they're
that's half of the
beyond-
population is, yeah, like you said, Christine, beyond repair. But
They're
he's
subhuman.
subhuman. But he
Yeah.
points out that conservatives also call progressive things that paints them as evil. And so this is like what Charlie Kirk talked about. He said, when the talking stops, the violence starts. And so I love the phrase, love the sinner, hate the sin. And so there's a way to talk about people. There's a way to point this out and say that, no, that behavior is evil. It's wrong. It's even demonic. But I've seen a lot of people literally saying these people are demons. And at that point, the sickness has entered you as well, I think. And that's something I'm very concerned about. And I know a lot of people in their grief and anger aren't ready to have that conversation. They just want to have their feelings and react. But I think it's important. And I like how Jonathan is putting this together. I think it's really important.
I don't know. I'm slightly partial to the idea that they might actually be demons, as crazy as that sounds. But I think the progressive, liberal, left wing, which I'm now considering to be a blob.
But wait, first of all,
that-
who is they? Who are the demons?
People who are celebrating his death.
Okay, so but that's not the left, right? I think that's important to distinguish.
Yes, but where is that energy coming from? Where is that level of toxic behavior coming from?
But
now,
that same principle is what they used on the Trump supporters and the right.
Right, but not. I mean, the thing is, so the ideology at this point, I personally feel, is similar to what you describe, like what people describe as demonic. It is nihilistic. It is empty. It is based upon mimicry and social contagion. It is based upon inversion of good things to bad things. So you're taking perpetrators and predators and portraying them as saints and victims, and you're taking victims and demonizing, attacking, slandering, punishing the sort of the righteous victims. And fundamentally, I don't like whether they did it to us, we did it to them. That's a tactical matter that I think is possibly value free in terms of like value neutral. I think what you have to look at is the substance and the qualitative differences between the two. And in that way, the entire, like, I want what I want to happen to the left now, the American liberal left. What I want to happen to them is what we did to Nazism and fascism after World War II, which was render it, crush it, like absolutely crush it as an ideology. And now it's like lying deep, buried down in the ground, and it will not rise again. I genuinely don't think that being a Nazi is even in right-wing circles. I mean, Groypers or whatever their subcultures aside, in the mainstream, in the MAGA movement, certainly being an actual Nazi is not socially acceptable. It is not socially acceptable anywhere to be a Nazi. That's exactly what we need to do to left-wing liberalism. I'm sorry, it just is. Because at this point, how much more damage are we going to see from these people? They still have an immense institutional power. They still have incredible cultural power. And what's really become evident to me, and is very disturbing, is that they have this sort of like psychic power that is driving these outbursts of, disgusting, vile, despicable. Those words aren't good enough to describe why these young people, and actually not just young people, but middle-aged people too, are running around and saying, yeah, good, who cares, blah, blah, rolling their eyes, doing all these little quirky little movements with their hands and face and like their tongues. I mean, these remind me, and again, I'm sort of like, am I being metaphorical or not? I genuinely don't know yet, but they remind me of possession. They remind me of people who are sort of zombified. And how many times have all of us here kind of in a conversation with someone that you love and respect and agree with on something, and then suddenly a subject comes up that in their minds is toxified, and they recoil, and it's almost like a zombie movie where you turn around and, oh no, this person's been infected, now they're a zombie, and they become hysterical. They can't have a conversation with you. They can't be your friend anymore. They unperson you, even if you are a family member or a best friend, it doesn't matter. That is not a political issue. It has to be dealt with. The deeper causes, we can sit here and surmise about them. That's what we should be doing, actually. But from the bigger viewpoint, it has to be legally crushed. It has to be socially crushed. And then we need to take a really deep, long look at how we got here, how it got to a place where so many young people in the United States think that blowing someone's neck apart on live television is something to celebrate.
It's in the education.
I agree. I agree.
And I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I think here's Kathleen says, I don't hate them, but I pity them because I used to be one of them and remember what an agonizing prison it was. And I think that one of the things that was somebody else, David, I think, said, you're going to have to accept, Leslie, that some people are wrong. That's what this entire YouTube channel is about. But I think some people are very wrong and dangerously so. So yeah, I do accept that completely. And that's something we've been talking about for a long time. But I will say that one of the things that unites a lot of the dialogues that I've been having with people over the last couple of years, as I started to realize what a problem this all was, is that you can ask everybody, when did you realize? And most people had a moment when they were like, oh crap, I had to kind of deprogram myself because I believed in this whole systemic thing, whatever you want to call it. There are people who are like, no, I was always conservative. And so I saw this coming for miles. But most of the people that I've talked with had some kind of an eye-opening experience. And so I think that it's really important when you talk about possession, one thing that's similar to the idea of possession is illness. When you get the flu, you're not the flu, you have the flu. And I think that this thing is a mind virus that's being transmitted through our education primarily. And, I just talked with Matthew Mastronardi, who's a high school teacher in Spokane, who was fired because he read, some of his students brought him To Kill a Mockingbird. It's got the N-word, the dreaded N-word in it. And they said, would you read that out loud? And he said, absolutely. It's part of the literature. It was written this way. It's in context. We're not going to let words have that kind of power. We're going to talk,
Right.
we'll talk this through. What's the cultural context of when this was written? Why was this included? And so he read a passage from it. One of his students, and his students loved him. They recorded this because it was such a kick to see this teacher read this thing. It was like, oh my God, he's really going to say it. It circulated, and he lost his job over it. He got fired. And one of the things he said was he went into that system thinking that he might be able to challenge the system and improve it, that there was room for reform. And what he realized was there's no reforming a system that's doing exactly what it was built to be doing.
Oh, this is such a good way of putting it. Absolutely. The slow march through the institutions, right?
I think I want to go a little further away, maybe where you were going, Leslie, was this a couple of things. I mean, there is this ideology. I agree with you. Like, if it was a mathematical function, put something in, something comes out, it's bad, right? Like, there's this mechanism. I think, Leslie, you're making maybe a case for these people in essence, maybe aren't demons or something like that. Like, but there is something about this thing getting engaged with it where people are sort of submitting themselves or like zombieifying themselves, and operantly, it is very like demonic types of things are going on. I also think we see so much of the worst of it, right? Like I see all those videos that are on there of like those people you were saying, like making those weird gestures and being so odd. And I'm not as in touch with on the ground, like going to someone who's on. I have friends who maybe might espouse a little bit of this idea or that idea, but aren't acting like it completely as crazy. I think I want to sort of tease out like the most extreme. And also like I was in a Facebook exchange with someone because I was sort of condemning, cheering on violence and stuff like that. And they gave me this quote from Charlie about what he said about gun deaths are okay. And, I had to go back and say, well, do you realize the entire context of like what he said? And, like things like that. So I don't disagree that there aren't people going around carrying these thoughts, but it's so easy to make the big lumping of like all people or whatever. And there is something really inverted about the way the ideology is gone. That is where, yeah, if you are really a victim, forget it, right? It's like the poor perpetrator or, whatever the case may be. But I
Yeah.
It's
don't
inverted, it's inverted in part because it's the opposite of what we know to be good for people. Like to be going around thinking that you're in this system that is completely built to oppress you, or to see yourself as inherently an oppressor that can never get away from that, and to be mind reading into people's motivations. We know there's research that this is bad for you, that leads to neurosis, depression, anxiety, everything you can think of. So we do know that, and that's part of the inversion, and it's like a reversal of all that's healthy and true. But the spiritual teacher, I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, Eckhart Tolle, he said he called it a mind virus. And I think that is a really useful way of looking at it, because if you can catch a virus, you can heal from a virus. A person's thinking can absolutely change.
I just
Yeah,
wonder,
yeah.
Mr. Jenny, when you talk about the crushing, because that's like, I guess we can do legal things, we can do social. I just feel like that's one thing that was so interesting with Charlie. Like he would actually converse with someone who, like he had a guy, I saw a clip going around. He was talking to someone who was Muslim and sort of defending that Muhammad married a 6-year-old and this and that. And then Charlie even goes, so let me steel man that, right? Like, I mean, obviously he was going to support that in the end, but I was like, okay, like he'd actually show how ridiculous it was by being in dialogue, with the person with the crazy,
Sure.
But we can't go after all the people who are, crazy and like get them all in a conversation either, because a lot of them would just shun us or try to ruin our lives, right? So,
Right.
Well, I think it's
yeah.
really important to avoid collective punishment and collective grouping of people. And one of the things that I keep seeing is the left thinks this, the left is celebrating, the left is XYZ. And I think what Christine said is right on. The people who do bad actions, if you're on social media celebrating anybody's death, I don't care if it's Osama bin Laden. I don't care. You shouldn't be doing that. That's inhuman. And if we should apply that across the board. I'm disgusted when I see people celebrating the death of a person. You can celebrate the end of something that a person did if they're somebody you think is really awful, but even a death row criminal, there's tragedy in that. Punish somebody for what they've done, but to dance on a grave is disgusting. And So I would wholeheartedly say that that kind of thing doesn't belong in the public square, and that, maybe you should lose your social media account if you're celebrating a death. But you see somebody doing that and you extrapolate outward to everybody who votes Democrat. That's just exactly the same thing as was being done on the other side. That's exactly the same thing. It's a false equivalency. It's collective punishment. And I have a really hard time with that. But at the same time, I do absolutely agree with what you're saying, Jenny, about legal suppression of some of this stuff, this left-wing progressive ideology that tears families apart, that destroys gender norms, that, wants to make a race war. I think it's horrible and we should get rid of it.
But in any, so I mean, this is not a kinetic war, thank God, but it is a political war and it is a cultural war. And in any war, there are two sides, or there's the end. At the end of it, there is a winner and there is a loser. The loser side collectively loses, and as such, it is collectively punished to one degree or another. Obviously, punishment can range from actual terrible mass murder, or it can just be you lost. You are going to pay some consequences for having backed the wrong side and acted in accordance with your side, which was deemed harmful by us, and we beat you. We beat you. Okay. There has to be a loser in this game.
Who is we?
It's very clear.
I mean,
to
I
me.
just have a really hard time with some of this language because
Well,
I'm not on the
for
right.
me,
I'm not on the right, and I'm not looking at the left. I'm
Yeah.
not on the left, and I'm not looking at the right. I'm
For
looking
me,
at a
it's
whole
the-
bunch of the same pattern perpetuating. And if we react with the same pattern that we're reacting to, then we're reacting without principle. And so I have a hard
that
time
I'm
with that.
referring to are people who are anti-woke and on the right. So conservatives, right wingers, and the anti-woke that are still sort of centrist, but are more, whoever is anti-woke.
Okay.
At this point, woke to me is the enemy, and it is an actual enemy. And I am using that word very literally, and it has to be defeated. Now, it is an ideology, and I actually don't really know how you go about defeating an ideology in a way that does not become punitive to the flesh and blood human beings, or overly punitive to the flesh and blood human beings who espouse it. I also am not entirely sure how en masse you separate the flesh and blood human with the ideology. But at a certain point, we have to realize that if we're going to be like, well, both sides, it will bite us in the ass even more than it has already. We are actually like threatened. Like, this is a civilizational threat. Woke is a civilizational threat.
Okay, but what is woke if it's not collective punishment and demographic reductionism?
Yes, but that's like a high-minded, universal intellectual concept. We're talking about something that's actually very concrete. And to me personally, I realized this earlier today. I don't actually think I believe in universalist intellectual principles. I believe there is truth and there is falsity. There is darkness and there is light. That's very basic and sort of generic, but tactically, it's impossible to win a just cause if you're constantly being like, oh, well, wait, are we being too much like our enemy? The time for that has passed.
Okay, so then how do you do
the
it?
non-woke left and the non-woke liberals have been doing that for 10 years. And, it's by the skin of our teeth that we're not living under a woke dystopian regime. The bullet missed Trump's ear head by a millimeter. You do it by winning. You do it by waging
What does winning
a war.
mean? What does it mean?
It means the destruction of woke.
So
How?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Because
that's a good question.
Look,
That's
let
a
me
very
say,
good question.
I mean, I work with people who are on the left. I mean, I have young clients who've been raised in the system, who think
Yeah.
very much this way.
I was raised in the system.
Yeah. So do you fight with them? Do you yell at them? Do you tell them that they're wrong? Or
But
do
that's
you
a different
open
matter.
their minds? And so what do you do?
That's a different matter, because interpersonally, one-on-one, like your role, my role, everyone on this call's role is not the exact same thing and doesn't have to exactly replicate a
but
larger concept of winning.
War. I just
Yes.
think that that's an easy word to throw around.
It's not. It's
But
not an
it's
easy word to
real
throw
easy
around.
to say because what
It's
you're
not. It's
imagining
not easy to
factions
say,
and lines.
but we've been in a war, Leslie. We've been in a war for 10 years. We've been in a cold,
Okay, so
cultural and
practically,
spiritual war.
Practically,
You
what's the
win
step?
by aggressively pursuing the legal
Okay.
remedies and the political power, the hard power. And
Okay.
skulls are going to be cracked. I'm sorry, eggs are going to be cracked as well. Like we have to come down like a ton of bricks. Okay, we have to come down like a ton of bricks.
What does that look like,
on
though? What does that
social
look
media
like?
companies, on media companies, and on institutions that are educating educators. And we have
Yes.
to, these people have got to be made to face the consequences. Like there's like up and down the spectrum. Now, one-on-one, I tend to agree with you. And I think that's what Charlie did. Like maybe sometimes you could get into a big roaring argument, but in my experience, it never really works, right? I've never seen it work. But that's a different matter to the conceptual matter of stop, worrying about, are we going to become our enemy? Because, that is for that, like that talk is for like a more luxurious time when liberal values are still worth something. And right now, I regret to say, liberal values aren't worth shit. Like Charlie Kirk took it in the neck because liberal values have failed. They have failed utterly.
Ray says one by one, convince them to see the cult for what it is and leave it. I like that, Ray. And I know.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what,
like,
Jenny?
in theory,
you know what
can't
Jenny's
actually
saying,
do
though.
that. Like
Jenny,
you can't.
what-
I mean,
You're
Yeah, sorry.
saying you're in a way you're sort of speaking strategically, and you're saying that in a tennis match, you have to stay on your side of the net.
yes, that's very
That's
good
what
way
you're
of putting
saying.
it. Yeah.
I
That's a
think
great
what
way of putting it.
I'm concerned about, even though, I mean, believe me, I don't like the woke stuff either. I just see once people get power, guess what? They are going to probably be what the other ones were when they had power too and do the same thing. I mean, now I'm less about, I mean, I don't like the ideology, but I'm also concerned you just get somebody else in power against the other thing and they could just start doing all the behaviors that we don't like, and so that's where I'm concerned about what power does.
The thing about that is that that's like a hypothetical. Yeah, no, that's a totally.
I'm watching
It's
on the
not a
right. It's a
hypothetical.
lot of
It's not. It is
canceling,
hypothetical.
censoring.
No,
all this
okay.
stuff.
Has Antifa been declared a terrorist organization? No. Okay.
No.
People are losing their jobs for being dicks, for being publicly like shameful and despicable and anti-human, and they're losing their jobs. Whatever. I don't give two shits about that. Like this is entirely a hypothetical thing. If you're saying like, what's going to happen when my side takes power? Don't okay. For people
They
like
already
us,
have, and they already are doing things like trying to censor news stations, trying to I don't like seeing.
I personally I don't actually know how, if you like the actual sort of nuts and bolts of how this would work, obviously, otherwise I'd probably be making a lot of money in corporate America. But surely there's ways. Like if I could snap my fingers right now, I would say, right, hostile takeover of Comcast that owns MSNBC, hostile takeover of whatever the company is that owns CNN. Those companies have been like pumping out poisonous lies that have been calling us all Nazis
and
for
also
10 years.
Elon, same thing. He's sitting there pumping it out too. He's cheering it on. And there's that meme like, do a civil war. He's doing that right now. You can see his posts there.
But is Elon not also allowing kind of other people to talk? I don't know. That's a real question.
I don't know, but he's got this megaphone and he's just screeching for violence right now.
Okay, but you know
what?
Elon's on our side. He's
not on my side. I don't know what side. I don't know the side thing.
He's on the side. He's on the anti-woke side.
Okay.
For now.
Well, there's process and there's content. There's process and there's content. And if you're going to use the same process to promote different content, then you're still wrong on one level.
No, because content is all that matters.
No, it's totally not.
There are ways that process does matter. If suddenly, tomorrow morning we woke up and the doors, like people were dragged out of their, like innocent people were dragged out of their beds in the middle of the night because their horrible kid furry posted something on social media and they were disappeared into a dungeon like they have in Tehran or like they had in Moscow or whatever. That process would be categorically wrong. Okay. That would be wrong. But other than that, using aggressive political action, like or aggressive tactics of any kind, aggressive not in the violent kinetic sense, but in the sort of more, I guess it's not aggressive, it's just robust. That is value neutral. Okay. How do you expect to win if you're always going to be like, well, you know, maybe we like hand wringing. Oh, are we going too far? Are we going too far? Like, you know, I'm sorry, this is 100% a war. We call it a culture war all the time. We call it a culture war all the time.
I couldn't agree less with that. I feel like the thing that I object to about woke is the devaluation of human life, the collectivization of people, the reduction of people down to something that's less than a human being. Oh, you're white, so this is what you're worth. Oh, you're black, so here's what you're worth. You know, oh, you're gay, so here's what you're worth. Here, you know, these sorts of ways of collectively reducing the value of a human being. And if we start to do that in the service of fighting woke, then we've swallowed the same damn pill. We're doing the same damn thing.
But how does defeating that and immediately
defeating that looks like change?
Make you think that is just doing the same thing?
Well, I think that the problem is just conceptualized incorrectly. The problem is one of collectivism. I mean, we've collectivized and we've centralized too much of our thought into these like big video games we call social media.
But any mass movement, even a benign one, requires collective action. Like collective action, without collective action, you're not going to win.
Desperately is to decentralize. I think we desperately need to decentralize, and that's the problem.
Can you say more about how we would do that? How we would decentralize? Sorry about my dog. I'm going to mute myself.
I think one of the major ways in which we have collectivized and centralized is through education. When you've got UNESCO writing our education for K through 12 in the US, I mean, that's kind of crazy. We've got these massive global organizations that are trying to kind of churn out the right kind of person in order to be a cog in the wheel. Get your kids out of school now. Take your kids out of school. Let the public education system disintegrate. See that you don't have to live according to that particular system's thinking. That's the best way to decentralize. And then after that, you know, each person, each family, a family is the smallest unit of culture. Develop your own values. Stop listening to the loudspeakers that are chanting at you how to live and how to be a good person. Stop speaking the damn script. And that's what we're doing. We're hearing people just speaking a script, and it's revolting when you hear other people do it, especially when you hear these nasty, horrible scripts, like dancing on someone's grave. That's a script. We're hearing it over and over again. I think I've told you guys this thing. When Trump was shot, there was this really nice man, this really lovely old retired history teacher that owned a coin shop that my kids loved because they love old coins and old history stuff. And so we'd go and he would spend hours just talking to my kids about history and showing them different coins and giving them good deals. And, you know, it was just a really sweet old man. So we go in there after Trump is shot, and I hear him talking to the next customer or the customer before me and saying, oh, it's too bad they missed, you know, so you hear the script coming out of people's mouths. They're plugged into this damn system. Unplug yourself from that system. I speak those, and I'm allergic to it when I hear myself starting to speak those scripts too. And I speak a counter script, and then I realize, holy shit, I'm falling into the paradigm. I'm not on the left. I'm not on the right. I want to be outside of it.
I completely get that. Actually, I wrote an Instagram post saying something like that the other day. But how do you, if you're not sort of in some senses speaking from the same script, how do you have movement unity and movement discipline? And that is required.
I don't know, because there's a paradox in that, Jenny. There really is.
You know, I can tell you what it is. I can 100% tell you what it is. And it's the qualitative difference between the script of, like the woke script, because that comes out every time. And yes, the talking points that we then provide feel like a script because we're kind of taking them from our own version, our own experts, and the two sides are a mirror image of each other, right? But we are not the ones advocating for the castration of children and of boys and the selective cutting off the breasts of girls. Okay. That is a qualitative difference. Therefore, we are right. Okay. We are on the side of right. And trust me, Like I also soul search because I'm like, wait, how could it be that I am the only one in this group of friends and this group of family that sees the world this way? Am I the problem? Am I the problem? I like all of us, we always do that soul searching. And that is where my buck stops, which is we do not mutilate children's sexual parts. And I can then proceed from there with some level of confidence that whatever it takes to stop that, or to stop like the racial, like the systemic racism against white people, okay, to stop that, that's what we're going to have to do. And we are going to have to coalesce. We are going to have to share talking points up to a point, because what we are confronting with is a mirror image of us, which is completely confusing and confounding and it feels so gross. It feels so gross. So I completely get where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. But fundamentally, we have to have the balls to say that we're going to stop worrying about that. We don't have time to worry about that anymore. And essentially, you're 100% right. The family is the original, the primary unit of culture and of economics. But like essentially all of these, there's so many families that think like you. There's so many people that think like you and have over the last 5-10 years, taken their children out of the mainstream system and whatever. But that is that's its own form of collective action. Like the idea of collectivism, everything is context dependent is what I'm saying. This is why I'm deeply uncomfortable with liberal universality, because everything is context dependent. Like life is sacred, 100% life is sacred. But then again, sometimes you have to fight a war and kill other soldiers, or sometimes there's an intruder in your house and you have to shoot him with a gun. That intruder's life in theory is also sacred, and yet you still have to kill them sometimes. Okay. Like this is just reality. This is not a value judgment. So stop worrying about the universalist aspects of this. And we have to just figure out how we separate the person from the ideology so that we don't have to do terrible harm to them that's irreparable. And that's what you do, Leslie. That's what all of you do in talking to people very, very deranged and very deep in this psychosis. And that is God's work that you guys do. But then don't waste time. Your time is precious. The work you do is too precious to waste time and have angst over an idea of what our side might do at some point. These people deserve to be fired. The people who are being fired deserve to be fired. The USA deserve to be shut down. The Department of Education deserves to be defunded.
And that's
so that's raw power used for good.
Chris Almendra in the chat says we obviously start by dismantling the source that is indoctrinating people. And I do agree with that. I think what we're seeing right now with RFK trying to come at pharma and come at some of these big, we've got,
it's incredible.
Really, pharma, our medical industrial complex and our education system, they are so beyond corrupt and they exercise so much control over people. And I think that those absolutely should be taken down. And I agree with that. I just think some of this is really there is a paradox there, individual and collective. It's like it's like Immanuel Kant, the categorical imperative. What should I do? What I should do is what I perceive that if everybody did it would result in a better picture for all. That's what I should do. I shouldn't. That is always the answer to that. How should I act? Well, if I do X and everybody else does it, does the world get better or does it get worse? Well, there's my information. That's what I should do.
That's a really good question. But it's a really good point that you brought up with Kennedy's pharma and the education and all that, and all of that. Those are deep. Those are deep reforms. Those are structural reforms, right? That I 100% agree with. But look how they were portrayed and greeted by the opposition, by the political opposition. The hysteria and the fear mongering and the very strong reaction against that, people just everyone who people who consume the NPR and the Times and still believe it, right? Those people perceived what we perceive as very structurally necessary, very, very necessary structural reform. Those people perceive as a destruction of democracy and an attack on science. And maybe there were programs that were defunded that were helpful or whatever. I don't, whatever. And those examples were taken to represent the whole project. And so how do you tackle that? Like, what are your choices when you're looking at people who are having an absolute meltdown over something that was definitely hard but necessary, and the people who you are supposed to be partnered with in this citizenship project are having hysterical meltdowns and are mounting in their panic and their rage to stop you? What is the answer to that? That's not, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I don't know the answer. What is the answer to that? My gut tells me the only answer to that is to harden your own heart and keep going.
Well, when somebody's wrong, they're just wrong. Come out guns blazing against the wrong, but not, I don't know. I think that there's, and I'm not sure what exactly your question was about that, but legally
My question is, like,
speaking,
how do you
like
do
what's
that?
going on with RFK and all that, there is so much corruption in this system, and
Yeah.
it just really needs to be dismantled. It's ridiculous.
Right.
And
No,
and
but
the way that people are responding to that.
But
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
my question, what I'm trying to get at, and like I want to know what you guys think, is like, we're still in a democratic system where the government was elected and the government is enacting reform. That reform, by what we've become used to when there's been zero reform, is deep and really impactful. Okay, now you can lay out, you would be able to do a great job laying out for someone on the other side the corruption and the malfeasance and all that necessitated this deep, impactful, shocking reform. And you expect, you wouldn't expect, but in an ideal world, then that other party would be like, well, and then you would go back and forth in a rational, reasoned manner and come to some sort of compromise that actually maintained the impactful change, but blah, 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 right? But instead, what we're experiencing is the administration doing these things, which we all support because we understand the need for them because of the corruption. And instead of being met with that kind of like, okay, back and forth dialogue, we're met with a blowtorch of hyperbole and hysteria.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is very much representative of this problem that we initially started talking about, which was the reaction to Kirk's death. How do you reason with that? Like, how do you reason with that? And then how do you work with that? And what I'm saying, I think we need to crush it. Obviously, I don't mean Tiananmen Square style, actual human bodies, but like, yeah, no, I want to say that for the record. Like, but how do we work within a country or within a political paradigm? Because it's the same here in the UK, that when you try to make things better, you're actively called a fascist, extremist, threat to democracy. And then we see the Martin Luther King of the conservative movement get assassinated in front of the entire world. So to me, that leads me to a very hardened position. But tell me how to what else could work?
I mean, desperately, we need to undo the bureaucracies, undo the centralization. I mean, this is too many people trying to administer to other people. And when you get people looking at people as human resources, then you lose all sight of what really benefits the people. You look at these mass migrations and this European Union thinking that they can sort of simplify down all of these countries into just a playing board where we're moving things around and treating people, like game pieces, really. And the same with the United States. It's just too big. It's too large. I think we need to go back to, I would love to see the United States separate into a bunch of different, I would love to see secession of all the states. I mean, I think we go back to local control as much as possible. We decentralize and let people manage their own lives on the local level. And the only time you're going to get human treatment of people is when the people who are treating them see them as humans.
I'm like super sympathetic to that. Like very, very sympathetic to that. I think it's a very appealing and like a common sense thing. But I think we all have to understand the what's the word? I mean, entrenched is a kind way of putting it. Power systems that like I just made a joke, like I wouldn't, I'm not talking about running over bodies in Tiananmen Square. These entrenched power systems, even in the United States, and I'm not talking about the Trump administration, would 100% run us all over with tanks. Okay, they would.
Yeah.
They would. So again, when we're talking about like the fretting over, people's is there too much of a blowback against the assassination of the most beloved figure in the conservative movement? Like, to me, that's fundamentally the wrong question to be asking. To me, the fundamental question to ask is, how the hell do we defend ourselves from the psychotic foot soldiers of these entrenched power systems that would 100% run us over with tanks, Tiananmen Square style?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Interesting question. So you think there's that much animosity and actual physical murderous animosity towards people who are conservative within the US or who position themselves publicly against wokeness?
Yeah, I 100% do. I mean, I think the fact that Trump got reelected and has an administration in power obviously mitigates that to a pretty large degree. And the fact that, as terrible as COVID was, and it was an abomination, we didn't actually get rounded up into camps like a lot of the darker black pill people, said we were going to do, was going to happen to us. But they did force an experimental vaccine upon us that was incredibly harmful. They caused us to lose our jobs if we didn't take it. They kicked people out of the military for not taking it. They
wrecked an entire generation of children.
They wrecked an entire generation of children. They demonized people who were harmed by the vaccine or whose family members died from the vaccine. And then they're pretending like it never happened now. I think the only thing that limits their murderous intent is their ineptitude and their incompetence and their venality, because they're not clever enough to actually seize power. And that's really all that's standing in their way at this point. No, that's not true. I mean, MAGA stands in their way, but MAGA is the only thing that stands in the way. Trump is the only thing that stands in the way. As imperfect as he is,
I
whatever.
think Trump is system 100%. I think he's a system man doing what he's there to do. I just don't.
What's the system?
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? What do you mean? System?
I don't think that he's not this white knight that people want to make him out to be. Like, he's not.
But he's all we got.
I don't know.
I mean, he's the head of.
Do you think he's making things worse, Leslie?
I don't think he's making things worse. I just think he's doing pretty much same old, same old. I mean, he's thrown a few bombs in, but he's mostly
the one. He is the head of the government, as RFK is doing all these things that you were just talking about.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see some of that. I mean, particularly with regard to vaccines, I'm glad to see that there's some actual challenge coming out. People are seeing vaccine
revolutionary.
Policy. Yeah,
the things that RFK has been saying about vaccines were 100% taboo.
Well, but it also feels like it's a bit of it's potentially, maybe I'm too tinfoil hat, but I feel like there's a little bit of a pressure release valve that's going off because this needed to happen. But I just don't see it. Probably it's not going to result in the massive change that we actually need. We're not going to see these institutions unravel the way that they need to. We have insurance, which it's just a protection racket. Oh, you don't want the medical bills that we'll come in and save you from that medical bill by charging you like a massive percentage of your income over the course of a year. And then if you do end up in a medical situation, you're still going to have some debt after that anyway, but you need to have this, you must have this. So we've got this massive protection racket going on. I don't see that unraveling anytime soon.
No, I don't think so.
And our hospitals are just death zones. Like I needed an emergency surgery a couple of years ago. It was 2022. Yeah, June of 2022. I had to have an emergency surgery, and I was held hostage, writhing in pain, being shot up with fentanyl and morphine, and the guy wouldn't do my surgery because because I'd asked if I could skip the COVID test. I said, "Do I really need that?" And then he left me in there for hours, writhing in pain, and came in and basically mocked me. My ex-husband recorded the entire audio of it because it was so horrific. and the last place you want to go is these stupid hospitals. The medical system is completely wrecked. The education system is completely wrecked. We need it to be completely dismantled.
Yeah.
I mean, defund medical and public schools and all of it until we can have some parallel institutions that can come up and actually be supportive. But even then, take their teeth out. Don't let them be compulsory for people. We shouldn't have to buy medical insurance, and we shouldn't have to report to the state if we don't want to send our kids to their indoctrination camps. There's just the student debt.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah.
It's all got its fingers in people's lives to such a degree that they can't think straight. They can't think for themselves. I feel like I'm going on a giant rant, but this
No, the student debt is really ruinous. And back in the 70s, a college student could work full time as a waiter or waitress over the summer and earn enough to pay for a year of college. There's absolutely no way that can be done now. And people are leaving with enormous debt, which of course it actually impacts so many things downstream from there. Like it impacts for a lot of people being able to get married, because some people don't want to marry somebody with, $150,000 or more in student loan debt. So then that's impacting when they can have kids. It's just, I mean, it is a lifelong impact. And students, I know people are like, well, you knew what you were doing when you were taking out those loans. I mean, I took out loans for graduate school and they were small. I took out 18,000. Okay. But honestly, and I was in my 20s, but honestly, even at that time, I didn't fully understand what I was doing. I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't.
And there's no efforts to educate you about it. They want, they're selling you a product. The product is the loan. So they are motivated to get you to take it.
It's coercive because at that point, you don't feel like you have another option.
That's right.
Can I just want to ask a question. I know we're coming up on time, but because I'm sitting here just musing about just trying to change a system, right? Like there's these theories of incremental, or there's like Jenny started, there's a bit like we've got the power, let's just do the fucking thing, right? Like just do it. And like, I don't know from history, and I'm sitting here trying to think of myself, if we can think of things that were successful where there was, and I don't know, maybe there hasn't been any super large scale systemic change, I'm not sure, but I'm finding myself curious about the methods. Was it a matter of, Leslie, you're talking about, it's all up on us, like let's opt out, so I don't know. Can you guys think of where there's been something that worked where it wasn't like massively bloody for decades? Is it,
I don't think so.
Are we stuck with we can't really change things in a big way too fast, or I don't know.
We can change them though, because the same way the woke did it, they got into institutions and have been steadily chewing on them like little
over
termites. And so we can be much nicer termites who are less insane, but just as determined, and start chewing away at the institutions. And it will take multiple generations.
Yes,
Yeah.
it'll take decades.
Decades.
This whole idea that Trump was going to come in on his white horse and be the shining armor knight that was going to save us all was completely fabricated. I mean, it was they put so much hope and faith. I never did. Look, at the end of the day, was he the better option? I do believe that that's the case. And at the same time, I didn't think he was going to be able to rescue us. I think people thought this could all be redone and fixed in 4 years. And we've been in this mess for decades upon decades. It's going to take decades upon decades to undo it. So we're going to have multiple different administrations come in after this to be able to create those kinds of opportunities to get in there and create that kind of change.
Yeah.
It's never possible in 4 years. And I never saw him as a white knight.
I ultimately see all of this left versus right stuff as the distraction from what it really is. And they quelled that movement so quickly, but what was it called? The 99% thing? Do you guys remember that?
Yeah,
vaguely.
After the market crash, when people came out and realized how much.
Occupy
Wall Street.
Occupy Wall Street. Yeah.
Wait, so you're saying that's the real issue? Can you put it in a nutshell? Like, what is the real issue they're distracting from?
I mean, the real issue is that they're rolling out CBDCs. They're rolling out digital ID. There's more and more. I mean, you've got this Palantir crap. You've got these technocrats taking up more and more of our life, surveilling more and more of what we do. I mean, my husband took a part-time job. I could tell you stories about that. I should let him do it though, because he's got his own. But the surveillance is insane. If you
Really?
start work, yeah. Oh my God, it's crazy. They're watching your every move now. They want to digitalize your currency. They want in Washington state now, we have to have digital ID. We're not allowed to anymore just
Right.
use our driver's license. That just rolled out in 2025.
Oh.
I opted out by using my passport because you can use a passport instead still, but that's I don't know when that window is going to close, and a lot of people don't want to spring for a passport. So we're seeing more and more control and collectivization and bureaucratization from the top. These things that get us to hate each other, they're distracting us from what's really being taken from us. And I do think that we should call out bad behavior. I absolutely think that. And I absolutely think that anybody dancing on somebody's grave, they should have the plug just pulled on their social media. Get the hell off. We should not tolerate that shit. That's ridiculous. I don't care which side it is. When we start to dehumanize other people, that's a tiny hair's breadth from a call to violence. It's incitement when you start to do that kind of thing. So I would have a zero tolerance for that. But I really think that at the end of the day, we're being distracted from things that are,
The global takeover.
it's
which
just
is
antebellum. The way
Yeah.
that the antebellum period in the US before the Civil War,
Mhm.
there was this great push to get poor blacks and poor whites to really hate each other.
Yes.
Because if they could fight with each other, then they weren't paying attention to what was going on.
That
with
is
the
what I
big-
learned in my Black Studies class. And I will never forget that professor because it was, I think, one of the most honest and realist courses that I took, which is where he was Black, a Black man. And we studied that at great lengths. The fracture and the wedge that they put in between the poor Blacks and the poor whites to get them to hate each other, to create that divergence so that they would lose the power that they had against the ruling elites.
Yeah.
The ones that were in charge.
Yeah.
Bring
But that's what woke has been. That's exactly what woke has done.
So powerful.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Really
But
incredible.
you need a theory of the case. You need a philosophy to counteract that. You know, like there does need to be, like, ideas do matter, and I think people are motivated by meaning and ideas more than actually maybe even anything, or except maybe acceptance. But I agree with you. I think Americans are like have been under assault, literally under assault. Like that's part of the reason why I left, like whatever, 15 years ago. Like the system, you are all being like preyed upon financially by this corporate government blob. And yeah, you guys are
In
all
Europe
right.
too.
It's not as bad here. I mean, it's not great here. There's other things here, but it's not quite as predatory.
I mean, look at the
And
migration. That's all the same thing. It's all
that's
coming from
true.
the
Yeah,
top.
but the day to day, like the healthcare thing it's terrible here. It's free. Like so, you guys are getting terrible healthcare and paying for it, and I pay for it with my taxes, but I don't have to worry about bills at the end of it. But like the thing, like the Trump movement right now has the MAGA movement is a counter revolution. The revolution was woke. The revolution was globalist, woke, hybrid, and this is the counter revolution. And the counter revolution will fail if it doesn't deliver on reform, and that's actually very, very hard. Like I remember years ago, I was studying like international relations or something, or political science, and this woman called Theda Skocpol had written this like theory of revolutions and what causes them. And she said, you have to take a system that is exploitative and unpopular amongst its people, and for years tries to deal with that by just being more and more brutal. Sorry, someone's come in and the dog's freaked out. And what happened? And then they try to reform, and it's that period of reform, i.e., changing gears, where you're raising expectations amongst the downtrodden because you're promising reform.
It doesn't
If
happen.
you don't deliver on those expectations, heads roll. Like literally, I don't mean metaphorically. I mean French Revolution. I mean Russian Revolution. Violent mass revolutions, and that's what we don't actually want. Or maybe, I don't know. I don't want that yet. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, not ready for the hacking of heads. Just
I
yet.
don't want the hacking
Yeah.
of the heads.
Yeah. Well, gosh, what a great conversation. It feels like we could go on for another hour at least, but mindful of everybody's time.
I have guests that have just arrived, so I'm just going to run.
Well,
guys.
Jenny,
I don't mean to
before
be-
you go, I'll just
Yes.
say a lot of people have commented in the chat, being really grateful for the words that you've been sharing and
Oh,
the way that you've been
thank you.
expressing this. Thank you for sharing
you,
your
guys.
viewpoint. Thank you for all you do. And you guys go check out Jenny's Substack. I'll put a link in the video description. So if you're not already following her, you got to follow her.
Thank you
And
all.
see you later,
Substack,
Jenny.
really good.
All right, bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.
And thanks everybody on the in the chat for joining us. Oops, there we go. Let's see. I had a couple I wanted to read real quick.
Actually, I have to
Yeah.
jump to. I will see you
Okay,
guys.
Deborah. Well,
Bye.
I won't bother with that then. Bye, Deborah. Helena, she wants to know more about my hospital experience. Yeah, thanks. I'll be glad to share about that. It was really horrible. And some people are grateful for the conversation. I saw a few comments like that. Thank you all so much for being here today. And I know it's a really tough, it's really tough to process all of this, but yeah, we're glad to be able to have these conversations and for you guys to join us. So
Yeah.
have a wonderful week, everybody.
Wonderful to have disagreement and love each other anyhow.
Absolutely. That's right. That's right.
Absolutely.